Okay, so let's get started. I have here a model I'm going to rig. If you're watching this, this is like super elementary rigging, so I'm going to go through a whole thing. Depending on what part you're at, you can fast forward if you want. But let's start off by explaining. So this mesh is in a layer. It's really, really handy to use layers when you're rigging because it allows you to not affect, so I can control the visibility. I can make them transparent. I can go into reference mode, so like I can't click on anything to like alter the mesh, because at this point the mesh is not to be influenced at all. You can't add any verts or anything. It's just super, yeah. Now, at this point in the stage of the process, we're just moving forward. So it's just best to make it so you can't affect things like that. So okay, I'm gonna get started. I'm gonna put it in template mode so that I can just see the mesh. It's transparent, it's nice, it's super easy to work with. When I'm placing, I like to start with my spine. I'm going to go here into the side view. That way everything's just going to land directly in the middle. So I'm going to start off with my pelvis. I'm just going to place that directly in the middle. It's important, you can place joints between, I'll probably end up doing it for the knee, but I like to keep my joints sitting in line with my mesh because you're moving verts around, you're influencing verts. So you want your pivots to be, you want to make it easy for your model to understand what it's supposed to do when you're influencing these verts. So after you skin something, when you're skinning, what you're doing basically is telling what verts to listen to what joints. And then when you're rigging, you're telling what joints, how the joints to act, and you're using tools to make it easier to move the skeleton without actually touching it, so it's easier for the animator. So I'm going to place one right there. That's going to be right at the, you can see it kind of, the tank kind of caves in right there, so that's going to be right at the top. That's where I'm going to put that guy. And then I want the pivot for the brain to be right at the bottom of the brain, and then I'm going to place one at the top so that it knows we're basically going to be rotating this guy back and forth. Like, cool. So now, since we're done the first part, I'm going to go through and name everything. I'm using a convention I like. So I like to break it down from what it is to where it is on the body, and then my numbering system. So I'm going to do BN. I'm going to bind it. So that's when I later on, when I look at my outliner, I'm going to see all the BNs when I go to bind, and I'm going to know that those ones are going to come along in the bind. And then because this is dead center, I don't need to orient it on any side of the body, so I'm just going to move right on to where it is on the body. So this is my root, and it's going to be 01. So 01 is important at the end. So if I copy this, like if I hit duplicate right now, it's going to add an 02 at the end, so I know it's the second one. Now this is important because later on you're going to end up with a lot of names and a lot of joints, so that's just super important. So we're just going to go through. I'm going to do this one. This one's going to be spine, I suppose. I don't really know if this guy has a spine, but I guess he's standing upright, so he's not very human, but he's probably smarter than me because he's got a huge brain. So this is going to be BN brain 01, and then when we get to the top, now I'm not going to bind this one. It's going to know if this is moving or rotating. The brain is going to know to move where this is rotating without needing this. This is just here as like an orient. So if I had it somewhere else, it's just, this is where my axis is for the rotation. So it's going to be BE, end, basically. And that's going to be brain 01. Okay, now let's go into our front view. I'm going to start drawing out a leg. Another thing I want to point out, if you haven't already understood this, but the hierarchy, it has a visual representation in the viewport. So this arrow signifies that this is the most parent. So if I select this and I move it around, they all come with. So like that, you see. So when I start drawing, I'm going to go back into my joints, so I'll show you a little hotkey for that. This little box right here, this is my previously used tool. So in order to do a good hotkey for that is G. So I'm going to go, you see how it hopped down? I hit G on the keyboard and I went right back into joint drawing. So I'm going to place one right here at the ankle, or the hip. That's going to be my hip joint. And the reason I want it so far down, normally bodies, you'd want it to be kind of where your butt is because that's how you move. But this guy, he's got like a hard shell casing around his brain, so I would imagine there wouldn't be that much deformation. So I'm just going to place it right there, and then I'm probably just going to have all the influence be in the root, and then the hip is just going to be the pivot point from the knee. So I'm going to break my little rule here and place this joint dead center between these, and it should be fine. It's a fairly low poly model. It'll be fine. And then that's going to be my knee joint, and then I'm going to place one. As you can see, this isn't an airtight mesh, so you can see where the foot kind of ends right there at an angle. I'm going to place it right at the end there, and that's where my ankle is going to be. Now let's go through and name these. I'm going to hit W, or actually Q. I'm going to hit Q on the keyboard so that I can just go into my regular selection mode. I'm going to select the top one, and I'm going to do BN. And since this is oriented on the left side of the body, I'm going to place an L and then another underscore after it. And this will be good for later on. I'm going to teach you how to mirror over your joints. So that's important because you can use a naming convention to just get the names of the mirrored objects without having to do a bunch of typing. And it's super cool. So this is going to be my left hip 01. And now let's go down to my knee. And this is going to be BN left knee 01. And then I'm going to go down to my ankle. And I'm going to do BN left ankle 01. Okay, cool. Now, so as you can see, there's no arrow between these two, but they do need to be connected. So in order to do a parenting in the viewport, you could take it and you could slide it in here with the middle mouse press. So you can move things around in your outliner with a middle mouse press and drag. And you can see my arrow showed up and we're good to go. Or I hit undo. I'm going to, in the viewport, some people prefer to do things in the outliner. I kind of like to jump between the two, but when I'm working on drawing my skeleton, I like to just hands-free, just click. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my hip because I want it to be the child. You're going to click on a child first, and then your parent second. And then I'm going to hit the letter P for parent on my keyboard. And you see how it created a connection there, and it's now part of that hierarchy. Pretty cool. So now I can move this guy around, and he affects all that. And then I can do that with my hip, and it affects everything. It's pretty cool. So now let's go through and make our foot. But first, actually, in the side view, now knees, they are never perfectly straight like that. And, well, that's not necessarily true, but what we're going to do is we need to slide this a little bit forward so that we have a bend, because I'm going to perform an operation called an IK later on, and that stands for inverse kinematics. So I will be able to grab my ankle joint and move it around, and there's an algorithm for the rotation value of the knee and the hip. And in order for that to calculate properly, I need a little bit of a bend so it knows what direction. We're also going to build a controller for that so we can manipulate the direction of it. It's pretty cool.
Oh shit.
Okay, so now let's build our foot. So the next joint that I want to build, I'm going to hit G on the keyboard to go back into... It doesn't like it right now, I guess not. I'm going to go back into my joint mode, and then I'm going to place one right here. And this is going to be the ball of the foot, so I'm going to call it BN left ball 01. And then I'm going to go to my joints again, and I'm going to click at the end, and I'm going to call this one BE left foot 01. And I'm not going to bind it, so it gets a BE. So let's go back into Q. This is my selection mode. My hotkeys are not working right now. I'm not sure why. And now I'm going to select my ball, or my foot. Actually, first, why don't we place these? So let's grab these guys. And since I drew them in the side view, they placed them dead center without an X value. So that's great for when I'm drawing in the center, but in this case, I do have to slide them over. I'm going to place them right in the middle of the foot. Now let's go back into our side view, and now those are placed properly. I'm going to select my childmost and shift select the one I want to be the parent, and I'm going to hit P on the keyboard. And I'm going to do this again from ball to ankle, P on the keyboard. And now these are parented properly. I'm only moving my joints in the viewport because when you place them, you're getting an orient value, so this is pointing. This joint is pointing towards this joint because I drew it in that order. And it's just best to keep things safe like that, because you don't want a rotate value on your joints, because that can be very problematic when you constrain things later on. So it's just best to keep it with only a translate value, no rotate. You shouldn't be scaling anything either. So rotate and scale need to remain the way they are. If you do in fact need to rotate something, the way to do it is you're affecting the orient. So as you can see here, values are all good for my transform attributes. If I go down to joint, I can see a new one. This is my joint orient. So if I need to rotate this, you're going to go to joint orient, click in the value that you need to change. In this case, I'm going to do Y for the example. And I'm going to hold. If you're a Mac user, it's Command. If you're a PC user, it's Control. And I'm going to middle mouse drag inside here. And you can see how it's rotating. It's okay to have an orient value. It's not okay to have a rotate value. So just if you need to do that, keep that in mind. I'm in my attribute editor, so I'm editing the attribute itself. And the attribute that of the joint, not the transform attributes. Okay, so now I have my full skeleton. And what I'm going to do is I want to mirror this over here. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to click on the one, just the one. I don't need to select the hierarchy. It knows to repeat the hierarchy if I select the child most, or the parent most. Since I already have my middle, I don't need to do that. So I'm going to select the only one with an L value, or an L in the naming convention. And then I'm going to go into my rigging menu, and I'm going to go to skeleton, and then I'm going to go to the option mirror joints, options box. Now I already have it set up. I guess I can't reset these settings, but yeah. So I want the behavior, and also if you look here, I want this line because this is my straight line. So it's Z and Y, right? This guy's over here. He's not part of the equation. I want the mirror to go over the Z and Y. So Y and Z right here in the middle is what I'm going to have selected. Now, for the naming convention, it knows that I want to keep my naming convention, and it wants me to search and replace names. So anything that has the underscore, L underscore, which is why I do that. It makes it super easy to do this. If you were to just add an L without underscores around it, anytime you use the letter L in a word, it's going to replace that with an R, and you don't want that. That's terrible. It's going to be a whole mess, and you don't want that. So we're just going to, so that's why I do it that way, with the L in the middle there. So I'm going to apply this. Now, it's selected. You see how the R is there? It's pretty cool. So it just completely, it does my entire naming convention for the right side for me. I don't even have to do it. It's great. So that's a really cool tool. I'm just going to close out of that now. I have what I want. Cool. So my skeleton's completely made. It's all named and everything. Now let's get some controllers in here. So I have a couple custom ones that I've made, so I'm going to bring those in. So I'm going to file, import, and I'm going to go back out to rigging nerds, and I'm going to bring in my diamond controller and my global controller. Cool. So this guy, I can scale this guy down. And since I'm going to keep it there, it's going to be in the middle. Whenever you have a controller in place where you want it, just before you start connecting things to it, it's very important that you freeze the transforms and then delete the history. So now, in my channel box, there's no values. It's just completely zeroed out. So if I go over here, and then I want it to go back, when I'm animating, I can just hit 0. And now it's back to normal. It's pretty cool. Okay, cool. So let's start placing these. I'm going to build a custom one for the feet because I need it to fit around. I like my feet to kind of fit the shape of it. So I'm going to go over, I'm going to select, when you get it out on the screen, when you create your shape, I need to snap it to the joint so it knows what axes to be on. So you're going to hold V on the keyboard, and you see how your crosshair turns into a little circle. And also up here, I have this highlighted. If I'm holding down, I can middle mouse drag over to it, and now it's snapped to it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into component mode. So I'm going to hit F8. F8 on the keyboard goes into component mode. And you can also find it right here. So this is your regular mode, and this is your component mode. Or not regular mode, but yeah, select object. So this is going to be object component. Component means you're messing with the whatever, in this case it's going to be these, my points. And with that, so now I can move this around. I'm going to snap it to the grid, so I'm going to hold X, and as you can see the grid snap pops on. I want it back here, and now it's completely floored, and it's completely snapped to the grid. But I'm also not affecting the regular pivot. So you see how the pivot is still there when I'm in object mode? I want that. That's why I'm doing this in component mode. So when you go into component mode, you can influence these however you want, but the pivot is always going to be where I placed it in object mode. So I'm going to drag this forward, get it nice and shaped with the foot. I don't want to get too fancy, so I'm just going to leave it like that, but it's like a perfect oval with the foot, and now I'm going to go back into object mode. Cool, so now my pivot's there, it's on the floor, just perfect, love it, super easy to work with. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to hide this, get this out of here. It's too big. It's too big. Okay, cool. Now I'm going to duplicate this, and since I didn't have any rotate or anything that's like changed on either side, it's completely the same. It's identical. So I'm just going to grab it with the translate, and I'm going to hold V on the keyboard and drag it over here. So now it's identical on both sides. So now he has a foot controller for each foot. I like to go through and place my controllers where I'm going to have movement first, and then we'll get into the rigging of the skeleton. So you're like, what's he doing? That doesn't do anything. It's fine. We're going to get to it. I'm going to shrink down my diamond, make it nice and tiny, and I'm going to make these my knee controller. So I'm going to rotate them forward so they're pointing to the knee. My crosshair's giant. Okay. I'm going to hold down J before I click on the rotate, and this is going to snap to an angle. So I want it perfectly at 90 degrees. See how it completely did a 90 degree there? And now I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to drag him to the knee. And I'm going to duplicate him now before I do anything else, and I'm going to snap that to the other knee. So duplicate is Control or Command D, by the way. That's duplicate special. That's how I'm doing it so quickly. It's also found here. Duplicate special, or no, I'm sorry, it's just a regular duplicate. So yeah, Command D is duplicate. So now I'm going to drag these forward so they're right in front of the knee, and I'm going to freeze their transformations and delete their history. Freeze transformations is also found under Edit, or no, I'm sorry, freeze transformations under Modify. There it is right there. Delete by type history. Delete history is right here under Edit. I add things to shelves so that I can easily get to them because it just saves a bunch of time, and it's just ridiculous how long it takes to do this. Okay, now I'm going to do a couple more circular controllers. I'm going to do one for his root. So I'm going to hold down V and snap it to his root, and then make it big. And then I'm also going to do one at the base of his brain and at right above there, so I can pivot from here and here. So I'm just snapping them to the joints, super easy to work with. And I also need some for the ball controllers, or the ball joints. So I'm going to just recreate another one, and I'm going to customize this one to fit around the ball. So I'm just going to rotate that, do it, hold J to angle snap. I'm going to shrink it down. And then I'm going to go into component mode and kind of mess with it. Actually, I kind of want that facing a little bit. There we go. Cool. Cool. I'm going to hit F8, or I'm going to click there, depending on what your preference is. If you're a hotkey person, that's the cool way to do it. That's how the cool kids do it. And then I'm going to drag these guys down. Cool. I'm happy with that. It's nothing special. Hit F8 again to go back into object mode. It toggles between the two. And now I'm going to duplicate this guy and pop him over on the other ball. Cool. Now he's got some ball controllers, some knee controllers. I think for this rig, that's going to be fine. I don't need much. He's pretty simple. Now let's go through and color and name all of our controllers. So this controller is going to be my My prefix for controllers is CC, and that stands for control curve. CC underscore global 01. And that's going to be my controller for the global. For some reason I'm in component mode again, I don't know how that happened. Okay, and this is going to be my foot controller. It's going to be my foot IK controller. It's going to control the entire IK. You probably could get away, since this is a very simple rig, you probably get away with just naming it CC underscore foot 01. Except it's my left foot, so let's do the naming convention for that. Left foot 01. Cool. And then I'm going to name this one CC left ball 01. And then this is going to be CC left knee 01. I'm not worried about naming these. Well, actually, let's do something cool. I can go through to modify, and then I can do search and replace names from here. So since I have that selected, I'm going to search for underscore L underscore, and I'm going to switch it to underscore R underscore. And then let's see what happens. Nothing. I don't know why that didn't work. It's probably because it hates me. I probably have to mess with that a little bit more, but I'm just going to go through and name these anyway, just whatever. Underscore right foot 01. That's what it was, right? Okay, cool. And then CC underscore right ball 01. And then CC right knee 01. And then let's go up to this. This is going to be my root, so it's going to be CC root 01. CC brain base 01. And then let's go up to CC brain 01. Okay, so now I'm all named. Now I want to color code these, because this could get really, everything looks the same. It's the same color, so how can I tell what controller I'm grabbing? So I'm going to go here, and then because we're going to be messing around with its attributes, we're going to go to our attribute editor. And now I'm going to go to CC global shape. I want to go to the shape because I want to affect the whole thing. When I made this, it's made up of a bunch of different shapes. That's why it's all crazy. It's made up of a circle and a couple arrows. It's a big mess if I try to just color individually the different nerves. So we're going to go into object display, and then that gives us an option called drawing overrides. I'm going to click on drawing overrides, and I'm going to enable them. And I want to mess around with the color. This is my toggle for the color. For my big controllers, I like to keep it this neon green. There it is. That's going to be, oh, I was wrong. I think it is the shape. Yep, my bad. Okay, let's do this again. So if you have a custom controller and you have a bunch of different nerves that are parented together, it's going to be just the foot. I'm sorry, just like the basic name, the one that you named. And then let's enable our overrides. So since I did it once, I don't need to do it again. Every time I click on a controller, it's going to know this is where I want to be. I'm going to make these blue, nice bright blue. I'm going to make my ball red. And I kind of stick between neon green, blue, and red, and yellow. And I kind of stripe it. That way, I'm not like overdosing the color, and I'm also keeping it a good variety. No colors ever next to each other, kind of thing. And you cannot grab more than one. So you do have to go through and individually grab these. So I'm going to restart the cycle. I'm going to go to neon green. These controllers are different enough to not blend together. I'm going to make this one blue. Not that blue. Cool. This one's going to be red. And then let's go back to the green. Cool. Okay, so now all my controllers are set up. Now we're ready to start rigging. Cool. But first, let's go through and make sure our channel box is completely zeroed out on everything. Go to my rigging shelf where I have all my custom stuff. Freeze and delete history, freeze, delete history, freeze. Oh, that one was good. So now I know for a fact. I like to do this all at once for every single thing, or else I'm just going to forget and it's going to be a mess. Because now I know for a fact that every single one is frozen. Actually, I probably could have just highlighted all of them and done it, but I like to see it zero out on each one just to know. You can also toggle left and right in your outliner. Now I know for a fact. Cool. So let's get started on rigging. First off, let's build a couple groups now. Let's clean up our outliner, get it looking good. So my joints I want to be in a separate group. I'm going to hit Command G or Control G for PC users, and I'm going to do group, G for group underscore joints. I'm just going to prefix, I'm just going to make it super abbreviated. JNTS01, and then I'm going to make a control curves group. So I'm going to do G, well first I got to group it. Okay, G underscore control curves 01. Cool. And then brain guy, this is his whole group actually, I just realized. He has a separate group because this later on we're going to make a controller. So he's going to be G underscore mesh 01 because that's where my mesh is. Okay, now we're looking, it's looking a lot more organized. It's great, cool. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to start parenting things before I know, because I know for a fact that when I move my foot, I'm going to want the ball to come with it. So I'm going to parent this preemptively. So I'm going to select the child and then the adult, or the parent, and then hit P. And now these guys are together, and you see how it went inside there. So child, parent, P, and then I also want these guys to have a hierarchy as well. P, P. So now when I select this, they all move. Because later on, when I make this controller when I put his IKs on, if I move all of this, the whole skeleton up here is going to move, and the knees are going to buckle, and it's going to be pretty cool. We're going to see how this is easier for animators. But let's get started with, I'm going to put my IK in first, show you how that works. So I'm doing a special IK. There's two different kinds. I'm going to do, to show you what this looks like, I'm going to do this is a single chain solver. So now when I select my IK handle, it goes. But you see how like it kind of goes wherever it wants? It's all wonky. The single chain solver is for simpler things. I would probably use it for just joints that only have two in the chain. Like an eye controller. I can show you how to do that later on, but there's no eyes on this character. But yeah, so that's what you would use that for probably. I mean, I think for a while this is probably the only option, but now let's check out the rotate plane solver. This is the one I want. And it's because later on I can make this controller connect to the direction. Okay, cool. So you see how this arrow popped up? The solver is pointing in this direction, so it knows to make the knee buckle in that direction. You see how it's completely matched? So later on, I'm going to make it so this guy tells what direction this arrow to go in. It's pretty cool. Cool, so now I can parent this to this controller. Bam. And now this controller is directly connected to the IK. And the way I did that, I'll undo that so you can see. So I selected the handle. This little brown thing, it's the same color as my IK controller, or IK shape. It's gonna, if I click on it and then parent it, now it controls the IK handle. Cool. Now let's go in. I also want it to be able to rotate it. So I can't really just go in and tell this to rotate and have it affect the joint. You see how it's affecting the IK? That's cool and all, but I want more leverage here. So I'm going to put a rotate on this and this. Now, if I were to directly orient constrain this, it's going to change the way this is my orient constraint. It also can be found in constrain and then orient. It actually worked pretty well that time. I think it's because I didn't have any rotate or any orient value on it. But yeah, so that's kind of what it's doing. Well, it's whacking out. I don't know why it's doing it. But yeah, typically that's how it would do. But I'm going to show you how to put a buffer in there so that you don't have to worry about any weird stuff going on. So what we use is a locator. A locator is just a NURB that is shaped like a little pointer. I didn't need to size that. So I'm going to make it smaller. I'm going to go 0.2 on this one. So I made it smaller. I'm going to snap it to that joint. Okay, now it's all snapped in, ready to go. Now I want this to orient in the direction of my joint. So the best way to do that is to take the joint and be like, hey, follow me. But that's not where I want the orient constraint to be. I just use the constraint for the time being so that I can get it in the direction I want. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete that constraint that I just put in. And now, since I'm pointing in the right direction and nothing can happen to the joint, I'm going to apply that same constraint to it again, but backwards. So I'm going from the locator to the joint. And now it has the same thing. So now, when I click this, it's pink here, and that's how I know it's influencing it with the constraint. So now I'm going to select my locator and parent it to the foot controller. And now the controller is connected to everything. So now I can go here and see how it's rotating everything. Pretty cool. I'm going to go ahead and do that same thing to my ball. I'm going to create another locator, and I'm going to shrink it down. Cool. Now let's place that guy in here. Cool. So let's do this. So I want it to go in the direction, so I'm selecting my joint and then my locator, and then I'm hitting orient constraint. Great. It's all lined up perfectly. Now I'm going to delete that constraint. I don't want it. I don't want it there. And then now I'm going to do the same constraint to the joint from the locator so that the joint follows the rotation value of the locator. Because remember, we don't want rotation values on our joints. So now, since it's constrained, we don't have to get our hands dirty. Just the locator does. And it's very important that you don't zero out the transforms of your locator either, because then you'll end up with a big mess on your hands as well, because it's constrained. And that's another reason. Because I want to keep this zeroed out, I want my locator doing the dirty work. That way I don't have to worry about now. Oh wait, no, not that one. I want to parent that to the ball controller, sorry. Okay, cool. Now this guy, which is zeroed out, he doesn't have to get his hands dirty, but he can do the work. He's driving it. So there can be rotate values, but then when I zero them out, it just goes right back to normal, and that's great. So let's take a look at the other side. I'm going to make a couple more locators. I'm going to bring those down to 0.2. Great. And now I'm going to duplicate this right away so I don't have to keep doing it. And I'm going to place these where I want them. I'm going to duplicate another one because I'm probably going to be doing that. I'm going to have a rotate value in here too, so I'm going to put one in the crotch. Crotchety. Okay, cool. So now let's do this again. We're going to grab our joint and we're going to grab our locator and we're going to put a orient constraint on it so that it's pointing in the right direction. And then we're going to delete that constraint, and then we're going to grab our locator and re-grab the joint, and we're going to hit orient again. Cool. And then now, since I want that parented, I'm going to deselect, grab my area. See how we know it's influencing it. And now we're going to grab our controller, hit P, and now, voila, let's test out. It's always good to test out a controller right after you constrain it, because if you're not doing that and then something didn't turn out right, down the road you're going to end up with you're going to be like, I have a problem, and then you won't know where to fix it, and it's just super handy to know that stuff. Okay, now there was something weird there. I have a 180 here. Let's see what happens if I zero that out. Okay, that should be fine. Now let's see what happens. It might do something weird because I did that. I'm not sure. It's supposed to zero out, so let's see what happens. Okay, cool. So it did do what I thought it was going to do. So let's just undo what I just did. Maybe it'll just be fine. It just really shouldn't have that value there. But the joint doesn't have a value, so we should be fine. I'm going to go ahead and put this on and see what happens. Okay, cool. So that was fine. It's zeroed out again. We're good to go. Cool. Grab our locator and then our controller and hit P on the keyboard. Great. I didn't place my IK over here though, so let's do that first. Just realized that. Okay, so we're going to grab the top and the bottom for that, and I have my rotate plane solver already on, and then I'm going to grab my IK handle and then my controller. I'm going to hit P on the keyboard. That way it influences everything. So now this foot's got so much control. It can do all this cool stuff. Check it out. Awesome. Okay, so now I want to create a controller that will affect the direction of the knee. And that's what these guys are, my diamonds here. So earlier I snapped them directly on the knee, and now they sit directly in front of them. They're pointing to them. It's exactly how I want it. There's a couple different constraints you could do to position them properly. I just prefer to snap and then move and then to freeze the transforms. I think that's best. There's a couple different things you can do, like you can point and then aim it, but I'm fairly happy with it the way it is. So what you'd do is you would delete the constraint after you make it aim at it, but it's already aimed pretty well. So what I'm going to do is, since I should probably explain my order of clicking right now too. So like I said earlier, when you parent something, you want to select the child first. And that can be confusing because when you're placing a constraint, you want to select the thing influencing first. So just keep that in mind. It's backwards. It's a little bit weird. So before I grabbed my IK controller, or my IK handle, and then this to grab it so that this would influence this. But this influence is backwards for constraints. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my diamond and then my IK handle, and then I'm going to go to constraint, and I'm going to put a pull vector on it. And you see how it created this arrow here? So now, when I move around my knee controller, see how the knee follows? It's pretty cool. So that's going to, anytime I'm like bending my knee or something, that's going to change the direction of the knee. It's pretty great. I'm going to do that on this side as well. So I'm going to select my influence first and then my thing to be influenced, and I'm going to put another pull vector on it. And now you see how the arrow moved to point directly at the diamond? That's what I'm talking about. It's pretty cool. So let's test it out and make sure it works. Bam. It's looking good. Cool. So now those are working just fine. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here and I'm going to grab this controller. I'm also actually, now that I think about it, I'm going to be rotating these guys up here too. So why don't I grab this and duplicate it again and move it up. Duplicate. Move. Okay, cool. So now I got my driver, my locator is driving the whole thing. So I'm going to grab my joint first, my locator. I'm going to put an orient on it, delete it. And then I'm going to take that locator, now that it's oriented properly, and do that again. Cool. And now let's grab our locator and parent it to our controller, P. So now, check this out. This guy now drives the whole upper half. So since there's an IK and there's nothing parented from the feet to that, check out what the knees do. I didn't put a point constraint on it yet. Sorry, that was fail. Okay, so now I'm going to show you another one. So, okay, I'm going to grab the controller once again, and then I'm going to go right in here and grab that joint. And now I'm going to do a point constraint. So this angle one right here, it's right up here in your constraints. It's point. Point acts like an orient constraint, except it is translate value. So I can connect it directly to the joint. Okay, cool. See how the knees are moving with it? Cool, right? Awesome. So let's go here and let's do the same thing for these guys, except these guys don't need points because they are being driven by the root. So we're only going to do orient constraints with our locators. So let's grab our joint and our locator. Let's do another orient. And let's delete that constraint. Cool. Now let's grab our locator and our joint and do the same again. It's very repetitive, but once it's done, it's so cool. I did that wrong. I don't know what I was doing. Okay, cool. Sorry, P on the keyboard. I got really into constraining just now and I totally lost what I was doing. Awesome. Okay, let's do this again. One last time. That's our last locator. So we are done. We are done rigging our skeleton. I would recommend putting your constraints that you use a lot on your shelf. You see how much quicker that was. It can take a lot longer if you're going into your drop-down menus. I'm a huge sucker for shortcuts, so cool. So that works. That works. Great. Okay. Now that we're all good to go, let's make sure our knees are good. Yeah, okay, cool. Let's shrink this down. Take a look at what we got. So, okay, great. All of my groups are right here. I'm going to group these guys, and I'm going to call it, actually, wait, I think this guy. No, wait, that is the group I want. I'm just going to place it in there. So, like I said earlier, I can middle mouse drag to get things inside the way that works. Okay, now this guy, this is my, I don't want him in control curves. I want him in brain guy. So he's going to have his own group. And this is going to be G_CC global 01. Cool. So now he's pretty much good to go. Now we're going to do we're going to mess around with the attribute editor and the connection editor now. So I can make him scale. So when you have a rig, you're typically you're animating in one scene, and then you're bringing it in. And depending on if the environment in the scene that you're bringing it into, it might be scaled wrong. And so it's just easier to scale your character. So I can scale the whole thing, or you might even end up animating it that way. Like maybe he does get bigger, you know? So we're gonna give him a keyable attribute in his global scale. I'm gonna get rid of all this, okay? So I'm gonna right click on the ones I just highlighted, and I'm gonna do lock and hide selected, okay? So now I can only do translate and rotate. But I'm gonna add an attribute for the entire scale of the entire character. So I'm gonna go to edit in my channel box, and I'm gonna click add attribute, and I'm gonna name it char scale. Cool. With a minimum of 0 and a maximum of 1. That way he's 100% is 1 in this size right here. And then you can go a little bit lower down to 0. And I'm going to add that. And now check it out. It's right there. So cool, right? Going to close that out. And I'm going to take the joints, or actually, sorry, the control curves, and I'm going to put that in this group. And I'm going to parent it. Okay, so now let's see what happens when I do that. Check this out. See how all the joints and stuff are moving with it? Cool, right? So that's how that works. Oh, I added that to the wrong thing. Okay, wait, let me go back. I just realized. So I added it to the group. My bad, I can fix that. I wanted to add it to the nerve so that you can grab it and do that. So we'll just do it again. So now you can see it again. Super good. Cool, so there it is. So let's go back to this, and I don't really need these attributes, but wait, oh yeah, I'm just gonna lock and hide it. You don't even need it. And then I don't really need to scale it either, so I'm just gonna keep those gone. That's fine, it doesn't matter. Okay, cool. So these guys, I want to connect the mesh, the joint, and the control curves to the char scale attribute. So the way I'm gonna do that is I'm going to go to Windows, General Editors, and Connection Editor. Okay, here is where you can connect your attributes to the operations of other things. So I want the scale of this group. So the connection editor kind of functions weirdly. It's not like you click on something and it appears here. You're going to click on the thing you want, and then when you reload, it makes it so that's what's featured on whatever side, okay? So for instance, since I want this on this side, I'm going to go to my control curves and I'm going to reload right. And then I'm going to select X, or I'm going to first, I want to connect my scale to my char scale. So if on my right side, I'm going from to, so I'm taking this and I'm connecting it to these things. Sorry, it had a value. I don't know why I did that. Okay, cool. And now I'm going to go to my joints, and I'm going to scale these guys as well, and then my mesh, load, scale. And I'm doing this to the group. Groups function as a uniform thing for everything that's inside of it. You don't want to influence things directly. If you were, you can end up with problems that way. So let's see what happened. Okay, cool, works. So again, you go to Window, General Editors, Connection Editor, and it brings this up. And since I added the attribute to this NURBS curve, my global NURB, which is already selected, I can grab it and then connect it to the values of the things I have selected. So control curves, reload right, and I want it to be scale, so I selected all of them. And when you select them, you're connecting them. It's official. There's no like, if I hit close, everything I just did worked, okay? But yeah, so that's how that works. That's probably the most delicate part of the whole rig. You got to make sure you're doing it right. It's like it can cause some problems. So now let's bind our mesh. So what we're going to do for that is I'm going to click on my root joint, and I'm going to select hierarchy, and then I'm going to go with my mouse in my outliner. I'm going to hit F, and it's going to open everything up for me. I don't even have to like look for anything. It's great. So, like I mentioned earlier, everything I want bound, has a BN at the beginning. So I'm going to go through, I'm shifting, selecting to select multiple, but I'm skipping over all this, and I'm going to command select BN again, shift select, command select, shift select. Notice I'm leaving out the things with the BE. Cool, that's everything. I selected all my joints, great. Now we're going to go to the group mesh, and we're going to just bind, we're going to bind all these. So I'm going to command select them, shift select, and now all of them are there. It's cool. So I have my bind joints selected, and then I have my meshes selected. And then we're going to go up to skin, and we're going to go to the bind skinned options box. Now I want selected joints, closest distance, and normalize weights and post. This is fine. This is how I normally do it. You could probably mess around with these settings and get different, but yeah, get different options and get different results. But for this, this will be fine. So I'm going to click bind skinned, skin. Cool. Now I don't really need to see my joints anymore since I have controllers that I've made to influence the joints. So I'm going to go back into reference mode. So now I can clearly see my mesh. And now I'm going to mess around with some of these controllers and see how they're influencing the mesh. Okay, you see all that deformation right there? Like I said earlier, this is a metal casing, so I'm gonna click on him. I'm gonna get him out of reference mode real quick. I want the brain to be completely influenced by that joint right there. So what I'm gonna do is, since it's a simple mesh, I can just grab it, right click, paint skin weights. I'm actually going to hide the body because it is super in the way. Okay. There we go. Cool. Now I got that selected. And I'm going to flood this at 100% for that joint. So I'm going to go through the you could paint the weights for this. Actually, let me show you another way that's cool. So let's hit W and select that brain. Okay, cool. So I'm going to go into component mode. I'm going to select my vertex. So this is the component mode for that geometry. First, I'm going to select face, actually. It's having an issue because the joints are underneath. So I'm going to go out here and select all the faces, and then I'm going to hold Command and right click, and I'm going to go to vertices. Cool. And now I'm going to go to my Windows and General Editors, and I'm going to go to my component editors. So I want to edit that. So I don't want it to be influenced by any of this. So you see how, again, the naming convention really helps in this scenario. Why would I want it to be affected by my left hip or root or spine? No. So I'm going to grab all of those, and I'm just going to type in a 0, and they go away. It's really cool. And I want 100% influence on the brain. So I'm going to type in a 1. It's 100% influence now by the brain. Brain joint. Cool, I'm going to exit out of that. Now let's take a look at what we got. Let's get out of component mode. I'm going to go to object mode. And now I'm going to grab this guy. I'm going to rotate him. Isn't that cool? Now the brain rotates. Yeah. So that's how that works. And now I'm going to go back to my mesh. I'm going to unhide him. I'm hitting H on the keyboard to hide things. Just H. Toggles it on and off. It's pretty cool. I think it used to be you have to do Control H and then Shift H to get it back, but now in the 2016, I think this is new. I'm not quite sure. I feel like this wasn't always here. Cool. And now I'm going to go and grab all of the polys on his body. Weird, it's not. I don't know why it's not wrapping. Cool. There we go. So actually, it would probably just be easier to do this. Man, those joints do not like it. I'm going to select these guys real quick and put them in a layer so I don't touch them anymore. So I'm going to select my baby, the parent of the hierarchy, and I'm going to go to select hierarchy, and it's going to select everything in that hierarchy, and then I'm going to go over to my channel box, and I'm going to go to layers, and I'm going to create a layer from selecting. Oh wow, I just did 4 layers. That's so weird. Let's just do 1. Okay, and this is going to be joints. Cool. So now I can make them invisible and they go away. You can go up here to show and then get rid of joints, but this is like a bunch of stuff and it's super, I would much rather just have my layers set up and control the visibility from there. So much easier. I don't know why anybody does anything else. Cool, so let's go back to my mesh and go to faces and reselect this. And now I'm going to refine my selection. It doesn't like the shift. It's not like Max, where you can add to the selection. Okay, so I'm going to control drag to get rid of these. I don't want these selected. You can do a deselect ring if you just hold connect or control and then select the ring. It's pretty cool. Okay, cool. So now he's all selected. Let's do command right click to vertices. And I don't want any influence from the legs or the brain. Actually, the brain could be fine. No, I don't, because the brain is connected. I only want the root, so that's all I want for that guy. So let's go to General Editors, go to Component Editor, and just get rid of this. I don't want any of that. No, thank you. I don't know why I'm scrolling. There's way too many things here. I'm going to zero all that out. No, thank you. No hip, no knee, no hip, no hip. Okay, root is good though. Root and spine, I think we're going to be fine with. I'll keep those around, but I'm going to get rid of spine because it's unnecessary. So root I want at 1, but I'm going to get rid of all this other influence. I don't want it. Don't want it. Cool. So now let's take a look at what we got. Let's go into object mode, grab him, and let's see what happens. Cool. So now his metal casing is completely intact. His brain moves without affecting the casing, which is what we want. I don't know why we'd want anything else. Great. Okay, so let's go through and now let's look at the legs. So the legs, first what I'm going to do, I'm going to need to paint weights for the legs because there's some organic stuff back here that I need to take a look at. But instead of like going through and trying to get influence off of, why is that? Oh, my joints are visible again. How'd that happen? Okay. There's going to be influence. What is happening here? Oh, I know what happened. It's because that's part of the... Okay, well, it's working fine. Okay, so it's not influencing the left. So what I was worried about doing is if I select this and I select all its faces and then convert those to vertices, and then let's look at our component editor again. It's important to make sure that there's nothing with an R listed up here. Okay, there is. You see that? So that's what we need to get rid of that. So everything that from, yeah, there shouldn't be any root either. So let's keep all the left stuff because these things probably do have some effect on each other. And we're also going to, actually, I'm selecting the foot, so there shouldn't be any hip either or knee. We only want ball and ankle. So I'm going to get rid of all this. Let me just make sure there's nothing else here that I don't want to get rid of. Yeah, okay, cool. Wow, there's a lot of vertices. I'm going to zero all this out. And now the only influences should be the ankle and the ball. So let's take a look at what's going on with that. Okay. Cool. Loving it. Cool. So let's do that on this side as well. And I'm posing him, but I can easily just zero out his stuff. Okay, cool. Now let's convert this selection to vertices. Great. And then let's go into, whoops, I gotta think before I click, component editor. And let's get rid of everything that's left. This thing keeps popping up huge, and I don't know what its deal is. Okay, cool. Alright, let's take a look at this again. Okay, so I got that selected. Everything that's left, zero that out. And then anything that doesn't pertain to the ankle or the ball. Cool. Great. So this is just like a quick and clean way to get rid of influence where you don't want it. Honestly, a lot of people just go straight in and they paint weights, but I just think that's kind of ridiculous. Cool, so now you have I'm not going to get too into the painting of the weights. I'll probably just do an ankle, or not an ankle, I'll probably just do the knee, just because the knee is breaking a little bit. So let's take a look at that. There's some weird stuff going on here. So I'm going to get my legs in a bent position so that I can see where the deformation is happening. I think this is a really good practice. I think, yeah, you can eyeball it later on when you know what you're doing, but like right now, it's good to just take a look at what we're seeing here. So it looks like our root is affecting these guys a little bit. So let's get rid of that. So when I'm painting weights, there's a couple different options here. So value is basically how much you're influencing the mesh. So I'm at 1, so if I click, you see how much influence that it's really white. The white is kind of where the influence is, the black is where it isn't, and then everywhere in between is just like it sounds, it's in between. So I don't want this much from the root. The root is the joint that's in the middle, right? I want more from the hip. So I'm going to hold down control, which is going to basically do the opposite value. So when I hit this, it says, you see the little invert right there next to the R? That's basically giving me a value of 0 now. So this is just a really quick way to get your values quickly without toggling this every time you want to do something. So this is just really basic. I'm going to hold invert and I'm going to go along these verts here and I'm going to get rid of this influence. I don't want it there. Not from the root, no sir. I'm probably going to go up to this stripe, and just to keep things a little bit organic with his leg, I'm going to keep this little this little bit up here. Great. I'm going to go over to the right side and do that too. Completely unnecessary. Cool. So that's kind of looking like the way I want it. Now let's figure out, knees don't do that. They don't buckle in like that. So what we're going to need to do is get a little bit more calf influence in here. That way it retains its shape as the knee is deforming. So let's take a look at our hip. So the hip has way too much influence down here. This is not necessary. I'm going to hold control and go invert. You see how it's popping back up and getting more of its shape back? That's what we want. That's more human-like. So let's get some of that off here. Yeah. Oh, I don't want that to go that high. So I'm kind of, it's slowly fading. I kind of want it that way. That's looking a lot better. Cool, so let's go through and do that to the other side as well. Let's get a little bit more up here. No. And to change your brush size, I'm a little bit big right now. I'm holding B and I'm just clicking and dragging with the left mouse click. So that's how you do that. And this I can get closer to and focus in on one vertex rather than getting a bunch at a time, just for more precision. Cool, I'm liking that a lot more. He's a cartoon character, he's got some 2B legs, it's okay. Let's go to our right side, let's do our right hip now. And let's get rid of that stuff like we did before, holding control and hitting invert. I'm going to make my brush size a little bit bigger again because I'm not getting the influence I want. To zoom, to get a clean zoom, like a smooth zoom like that, I'm holding Alt and right clicking and dragging. A lot of people like to use the scroll, but it's incremental and I don't like that. I'd rather control how much I zoom. Cool, this is looking pretty good. Cool. Well, let's I'm gonna call it here. Let's get them all posed out. I think this is a good place to start for rigging. Cool. Now he's ready to go. He can jump. I broke him. Broke him already. But yeah, let's check out the knees. See how they're rotating with it. It's really cool. So this is a cool little rig. I'm really glad I learned how to rig on this guy. But yeah, well thank you guys. If you want to see more, just let me know. Great.